correct from your introduction is that I'm the chairman of the Presidential Task Force, but chairman of the Ministerial Task Force for Power. And with this, I would like you to let me share my screen. Okay. Can you let me share my screen?
All right, sir. I will do that now.
Okay.
Okay, you can go ahead, Prof.
Okay. Can you see it now?
It's coming up. Okay, it's up now.
Okay, that's good. Can you see the slides now?
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. Actually, when I got information about this event, it was only about 3-4 days ago. So I did not have much time to prepare specifically for this. What I did was to look at 3 of my previous presentations and pick slides here and there to put them for this particular discussion session. And what I plan to do is to discuss in 5 small sections. In the introduction, I will just try to put everything into context and then a general overview of the power sector.
I'm going now.
A little bit more than what Ben Ossie has stated. And then I will move to consider the major constraints of the sector and of the reforms itself. And then I will come with a number of steps, which I believe, if implemented, will lead to a better power sector for our country. And as usual, I'll round up the discussion. I'd like to begin by showing you, I'm sure quite a number of you, this picture of satellite picture of the world at night. And the satellite picture of the world at night, I think somebody has...
Go and check another.
Ude Mezwe, can you mute yourself? Ude. The essential thing is that Africa is a dark continent of the world. This is the meaning of Africa, the dark continent. It is on the list. If you look at the Australian subcontinent, all those sections are in their desert. And if you look at Northern Africa too, is where there are no people. And if you look at Latin America, that part is Amazon. So it's a very thick jungle, not much inhabitants are there. But for Africa, you can see, of course, we have the Sahara and Kalahari Desert. But aside from the desert, you can see where people are all dark. So Africa is a dark continent. And therefore, we need to discuss about Africa a little bit before dovetailing into Nigeria. And of course, those of you that are reading widely, I'm sure you would have come across the point that Africa is a continent with the worst energy poverty, with about 600 million Africans living without access to electricity at all. Even with this, there are quite a number of African countries that have got beautiful situation in their country. As you can see at the bottom of this slide, the International Energy Agency's information has that there are some African countries with 100% electricity, 100%. And all North African countries are close to 100%. And then nearer home, Ghana is 84% and South Africa 84%. That's why if you go to Ghana now, there will be virtually no load shedding. And this situation The Nigerian case of electricity access is 2%. Access, I should say, I don't like this parameter access. This is because it does not take care of the load shedding and so on. So the access is just connectivity. Those places that are connected to electricity supply, but not issue of availability. For availability, we better discuss the annual average electricity consumption per capita. I will come to it in a moment. Now, like Ben Ossi mentioned in his introductory remarks, the current installed generation capacity in our country is about 13,000 megawatts, but the actual generation capacity is about 7,500. However, only about 4 to 5,000 is available for distribution to consumers. 4,000 for 200 million people works out to annual average electricity consumption per capita of 175. And if it is 5,000, it works out 219 kilowatt hour for every Nigerian. This is so tiny, just a small lamp, that's all. On the other hand, the International Energy Agency's statistics for 2018 show that the average electricity consumption per capita of America is about 12,000. The world as a whole, average 2,600. Sub-Saharan African average, 500. So the giant of Africa is not even up to Sub-Saharan Africa average. And if we are to be at average annual electricity per capita of 500, then generation capacity should be about 11,500, not 4,500. And if we are to be at the world average of 2,600, then our generation should be about 59,000 megawatts. I hope my fellow engineers realize the deficit in electricity supply that we are suffering from. Now, I want to quickly say 4,500 megawatts for a population of more than 200 million is grossly inadequate for the Nigerian economy. And you know the major segments of the economy is industry, services, transport, and households. Now, electricity demand projections produced by Energy Commission of Nigeria a couple of years ago, using what is called the 2050 pathway calculator for a GDP growth rate of 6%, showed by 2020, that's last year, we should have had something like 31,000 megawatts. And for 2030, it should be about 63,000 megawatts and about 152,000 megawatts by year 2050. Now, I'm pointing this because it fits reasonably well with this analysis I did of average electricity consumption per capita of the world and of sub-Saharan Africa. Now, expansion of the energy mix for electricity generation by using all viable energy sources is what so many countries have been doing. And it leads to enhanced level of electricity security of supply, which large industries always look for before establishing their plants. Ben Ossi, you have just told us not only large industry, large retail companies like ShopRite too. If you want to do big business, then you must have readily available electricity. The major challenge to Nigeria that COVID-19 exposed is how to overcome the vulnerability of relying on the income from the sale of oil and gas. I'll come back to this much later in the presentation. While some energy practitioners postulate that the income from oil will stabilize when the pandemic is over, the unstoppable global advent of electric vehicles will lead to even greater reduction of the demand for our oil and gas and could plunge Nigeria into a very bad recession. So the thing to do, we must look for other sources of revenue, not only to fund the country, but in our case, on what we are discussing, we cannot fund the energy sector if we don't have money. Now, on the overview of the Nigerian power sector, I just want to remind us all, it was way back around 1999, 2000, when the government of the day came out publicly to say it cannot shoulder all the funding requirements of the power sector. And therefore, it was going to liberalize the industry to allow private sector players to come in. And then also it will later privatize after the liberalization. The liberalization was brought by the Electric Power Sector Reform Act of 2005, which paved way for development of competitive electricity market, creation of successor companies out of NEPA structure, private sector participation, that is independent power plants and joint ventures. And then the EPSRA led to the establishment of the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission, the transition of the erstwhile NEPA to Power Holding Company, and then the formation of structures like the National Electricity Liability Management Company to wind down the government utility. Now, the reform in the power sector led to unbundling of NEPA and the creation of 18 successors. I think you all know this. Maybe I should just jump quickly. Apart from establishing NAC, the law also established Nigerian Bulk Electricity Trading. It also established Rural Electrification Agency, Rural Electrification Fund, and a very important component, the Power Consumers Assistance Fund, and quite a number of others. The licenses issued by NAC, I was following it up to June 2018. Thereafter, I stopped because they are going so far. If you just click their website, you see the current licenses, which I didn't bother to update because they are over 200 at the moment. But the main important points here is that at the moment, only about 1/4 of the licensees have been developed. They are having difficulties raising money from financial institutions. I think we should discuss this a little bit later. Now, to show the overall picture, I thought this slide is useful. You have the generation companies called GENCOs. You have the DISCOs on the other side. You have almighty regulator all over. And then you have the bulk electricity trading. The transmission company is one at the moment. And then there are quite a number of others around here, just to give you an overall picture. And I think at this stage, I should move on quickly to say on the privatization, actually government retained 40% ownership stakes in the distribution companies and 49% in the Geregu 1 successor generation company, while the remaining thermal successor GENCOs were fully privatized, as Ben Ossi mentioned. The two hydro companies at Shiroro and Kainji were concessioned for 30 years with government retaining ownership of the assets. The regulator has produced the multi-year tariff order that adjusts power tariffs periodically in line with inflation and exchange rate, amongst others, and which allows for reasonable cost recovery by any investor in the power sector. However, I should quickly add that it has not been possible for tariff to be rolled out in line with MITRE for reasons we all know. The unions have been up in arms to prevent any, and it's a big problem at the moment. Now, again, on the issue of major constraints or major issues, I want to put it in summary, not to make it too unnecessarily bulky to say, well, to me, the first and foremost issue, bearing in mind the comparison I did with sub-Saharan Africa and average electricity consumption, I think the time we privatized the electricity level was too small for the number of Nigerians available. So this is number one problem. Electricity available for Nigerians is too little. Then number two is the distribution problems. As you all know, rejection of supplies from GENCOs, like as limited the available electricity for distribution to consumers. Then DISCOs have been having different problems. Some DISCOs are better than others, but in general, we can still say there's inability to collect payments from all consumers. There's also inability to pay the GENCOs and the gas suppliers and IMBET and even TCN for electricity will to the DISCOs. And then, of course, there's problem of meters that has forced the regulator to come up with a meter asset regulation map. And I'll mention it a little bit later. Then transmission, the main problem of transmission is that the grid cannot cover all the country within reasonable time. And portions of grid still require to be strengthened. And so one can say the major problem of TCN is lack of adequate funds to strengthen and expand the national grid. Now, again, there is still the problem of gas constraints. Of course, of recent, the government has rolled out a number of strategies to make sure gas is available in the next year or thereabouts. But we can still say that more than 70% of the nation's current power plants don't have adequate quantity and quality of gas they need. Then the other problem is the majority of licensees, like I mentioned, have difficulties in raising funds from financial institutions. And the main reason is unattractive business plans occasioned by existing low electricity tariff. It's a catch-22. I'm sure we will discuss this quite a lot as part of the interaction. Then poor demand side management. Of course, I should tell you that recent studies show that there are significant wastages in electricity supply and consumption. And then, of course, there is the issue of vandalization and customer indiscipline that leads to illegal connections and electricity theft. These are very bad situations. Now, I want to move to suggest the way forward. And the first point I want to make before going into any step is to say I have had even engineers power sector reforms scrap it. I say no, we should not scrap the power sector reforms because the law that was enacted in 2005, the unbundling of the NEPA and the privatization steps, the creation of regulator, the creation of bulk electricity, all these are in line with what most countries of the world have done in privatization of their electricity sectors. What we should do rather is what do we need to do to strengthen the sector? Because actually canceling the privatization will be what is commonly said as taking the hands of the clock backwards. That will not be good. So on the other hand, we should do quite a number of things. The first is to expand electricity generation through expansion of the energy mix. Like I mentioned, 200 million people, 4,500 is nothing. We must move towards the world average. If it is the world average, we're talking about 59, 60,000 megawatts. That is what we have to do. When we do that, we'll be moving towards the bracket of India, China, Brazil. And then the poverty will go and all these kind of problems will go. So number one is issue of expansion of the electricity mix. Currently is relying mainly on gas and hydro. And we have so many other resources, and I think all of them should be used. The renewable solar, wind, biomass, more hydro. Then we have a lot of coal. 14 states, from Enugu up to Gombe State, there's coal. We can use clean coal power plants because environmentalists will be up in arms, so you use one less carbon dioxide emission. We have significant uranium, which is the major element for nuclear power plant in most of the northeastern states and Cross River State. So we can have nuclear power country to come and help us. And if we do that, then we will be ready to move towards the 63,000 megawatts that is required for us to meet goal number 7 of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, which Nigeria has signed and ratified. Now, the way the government came up with the Niger Delta Power Holding Company to introduce gas power plants, I think 12 or 13 of them, in a very beautiful manner, that can be utilized to expand the electricity supply. And once the plants are developed along with the evacuation system, they can then be privatized or concessioned transparently. Now, the expansion of the energy mix, I want to emphasize, it should be undertaken in an organized fashion based on computing the nation's electricity demand and supply projections, like what the Energy Commission has done using the 2050 pathway calculator. One of the things that government has done in recent times is coming up with what they call energizing education program, in which the phase 1 of the universities, 13 of them, later it will be extended to all universities, And much later to all tertiary institutions. We have this energizing education, bringing hybrid plans that will ensure our institutions have close to 24/7 electricity. The first one is at Bayero University. The other one is at Federal University in Dufuali Kieko in Ebonyi State. And most of them are already working in a very beautiful manner. And so I want to say that this is a move in the right direction. Then the next one on the issue of distribution, I want to say we need to really strengthen the discourse significantly. And one of the ways that this can be done is for funds to be secured, possibly from the African Development Bank or World Bank, so that government will pay its 40% shareholding in the discourse and to encourage the discourse to expand their networks and enable government to have much say in the affairs of the discourse. I say this because at the moment, the government seems to be represented by only the Bureau for Public Enterprises, one representative from BPA on the governing board. But if government can pay 40% shareholding, government can take chairman if the private take the managing director, and if there are 10 board members, government can take 4, and the private group will take 6. In that way, I think there will be better governance of the discourse. On expansion of the grid, I want to say government should really fast track this, and more funds should be deployed from budgetary provisions and from development partners. Again, on the regulator, I want to say it should continue exercising its regulatory functions like it did to solve the metering problem by coming up with meter asset provider regulations. And I think government is putting funds in that direction. And I think slowly and slowly, meters are being provided around the country. In my view, as soon as electricity supply attains reasonable improvement all over the country, then tariff issue can be addressed. And this is where the provision of MITO could be implemented so that the catch-22 issue in the sense of financial institutions not finding business plans attractive for them to fund will begin to be solved. Other recommendations include integrating, there's the Vision 3030 for power, which was one of the decisions in 2018 at National Council on Power. And specifically, it was that by 2030, Nigeria will generate 30,000 megawatts and 30% will be from renewables other than large solar. And if that Vision 3030 is integrated with goal number 7 of the SDGs and the recent Siemens roadmap for power, I think the country will go much beyond 30,000 megawatts by year 2030. And then there is need at the moment to use embedded power plants to bridge the demand supply gaps at municipalities that are major load centers, and then to use off-grid and mini-grid plants for locations far away. It seems like all other countries, is not everywhere the national grid can reach. So in those places that are very difficult terrains, it is best to use off-grid and mini-grids. Not only difficult terrains, but there are places where if you extend the grid, the commercial viability of the electricity will be very low. So in that regard, off-grid and mini-grids will be better. Then the provision of gas and other fuels, like I mentioned a little while ago, power plants are there. And of course, I should tell you, if the country is to make use of the huge gas resource it has, then even more gas power plants will be built. And so we need to ensure the nation's all existing gas fields are developed to produce the right quantity and quality of gas that power plants. Also, arrangements with relevant ministries, departments, and agencies should be done, and also with the private sector for the provision of coal, uranium, and biofuels for future plants, so that when the plants are ready, there will be no delays like we had in the case of the NIPP plants and the gas, which was really very bad. Then there's issue of actualizing of license. Apart from allowing NAC to review the tariffs, there is also need for government to hold investment summits. I participated in one of such, I think around 20 2013, 2014. And I think shortly thereafter, some of the private sector groups understood better the thinking of government for power, and they funded some of the companies that got licenses from NAC. So I think investment summit should continue very regularly so that not only the Nigerian financial institutions, but the global ones as well. There's also need to entrench energy efficiency and conservation. I say this because one of the experiments we did at Energy Commission around Abuja tallied with a result we saw outside Nigeria. That is a reduction of up to 40% of electricity demand by using energy efficiency and conservation concepts. Then one other area that I think is good for the power sector is the commonly consumed items of the power plants should be locally produced or assembled at worst. Of course, issue of these misdemeanors and criminal acts, anybody caught stealing electricity or doing any illegal connections or bypassing meters should be promptly dealt with in line with the provision of relevant laws. Now, COVID-19 pandemic that I mentioned at the beginning that led to the global fall in demand for oil, which in turn led the nation to economic recession, has led to a serious slowing down of investments in the power sector as well. And on this issue of COVID-19, like I mentioned, some of our colleagues, especially those in the oil industry, were insisting that when the pandemic goes down, everything will come. I'm saying no, electric vehicles are coming, and it's even going to lead to sharper drop in the demand for oil all over the world, because the entire transport sector, the plan is to migrate to electric vehicles from motorcycles to cars, to buses, to trucks, to tractors, to combined harvesters, to aeroplanes. All of them are migrating to electric vehicles sooner than later. A lot of tests are being done in Japan, in USA, Western Germany, and a few other countries. Right now, they have developed cars with a set of batteries that on a single charge of those batteries, one can travel up to 1,500 kilometers. I think that will be from Maiduguri to Lagos on a single charge. And when you reach Lagos, the charging is 15, 20 minutes. So before you finish taking your snack, or if you are the prayer man, before you pray, it's fully charged for you to take another distance like that. Now, I think really and truly, the Nigerian Society of Engineers should worry about the funding of the power sector and by extension, entire engineering sector. And NSC should recommend the appointment of a high-powered national task force as an important part of government's economic sustainability plan to arrange the immediate commencement of activities for expanding the nation's revenue through agriculture for enhanced food security and for export, including setting up agro-allied industries, through large-scale open cast and underground mines and mineral processing plants, through large-scale manufacturing industries in areas where Nigeria has comparative advantages, and of course, significant improvement of the major tourism sites in the country. There are quite a number of them. The task force should also be made to recommend significantly expanded use of the nation's oil and gas endowment within the country for production of petrochemicals, fertilizers, pesticides, herbicides, pharmaceuticals, colta, and so on. And some of these products can also be exported to surrounding countries and even countries outside Africa. A good plan, in my strong opinion, will be a key impetus for financial institutions to fund the power sector projects better. I want to move towards the end of my presentation by emphasizing that the general structure of the Nigerian power sector reform is in line with global best practice and should be retained. There's no talk of cancellation of the power sector. As I said, that will be retrogressive. Any member of the Nigerian electricity supply industry that is confirmed to have clearly underperformed should have their operation license withdrawn, and where applicable, a new process should be undertaken to identify new preferred bidders. Electricity supply level should be significantly expanded by expanding the energy mix for each generation to include all viable conventional and renewable energy resources, such as supply will be approaching the 63,000 megawatts by 2030, so that Nigeria will attain goal number 7 of the Sustainable Development Goals, which, as I said, Nigeria has not only signed, but it has ratified. The recent federal government's Energizing Education Program, and the other one, the Energizing Economies Initiative, mostly by use of solar power plants for off-grid utilization, but with grid connectivity, are in line with the promoted expansion of the energy mix for electricity supply. There is the very recent decision to provide 5 million homes with solar home systems is also in this direction, because by government's estimation, this will cater for about 25 million Nigerians. A special purpose vehicle similar to the Niger Delta Power Holding Company's National Integrated Power Projects should be adopted for expanding the nation's electricity supply to develop power plants and associated infrastructure for evacuating the generated power. The plants, when completed, in my strong opinion, should be sold or concessioned to preferred bidders after transparent processes. To heed to the several calls of the National Assembly, the government should consult stakeholders and subsequently send bills for amending any law that needs to be amended to strengthen the sector. There are quite a number of them. One area is the privatization of transmission. Of course, like I've said, the transmission should be regionalized and then transparently concession. Another area in this point is the issue of shareholding of the discourse. So many state governments are clamoring that they should be allowed to get some of this percentage. I personally am not for this, but if the Nigerian people like it, so be it. The demand for electricity is ever increasing. You know, it's just like school enrollment. Enrollment with access to university is always high. The need for medicine is always high. The need for everything is high. Water supply, everything. So electricity supply is the same. When you say the demand today is about 35,000 megawatts, in another 1 year, it's going to go up because of population increase, because our increased awareness of a better quality of living and so on and so forth. So it should be electricity generation expansion plan should be there, and it should be mainstreamed into the nation's overall development plan. Right now, there seems to be some disconnect. There is also need to entrench energy efficiency and conservation, which has been shown, like I mentioned, of reducing electricity consumption by up to 40%. There is need to strengthen the sustenance of power plants by locally producing or assembly of some of the components that are commonly used. Transformers, feeder pillars, switch gears, switch over gears, meters, as well as modules, solar modules, and its balance of system components like inverters, deep cycle batteries, and charge controllers, among others. There's also the need to handle persons involved in misdemeanors like stealing of electricity and illegal connection in line with the laws. The unstoppable global phenomena of electric vehicles will surely lead to significant decrease in the demand, in the income from sale of crude oil in the next 15 to 20 years, and reduce investments in the power sector. And so this calls for immediate production and implementation of a pragmatic master plan for significant increase in revenue generation from agriculture, from mining, manufacturing, and tourism, all of which require round-the-clock electricity supply. And of course, in view of the situation we are, enhance security in the nation as a whole and at the sites of the major economic activities in particular. There is the need to significantly expand the internal use of oil in Nigeria, because in the next few years, the demand will continue falling down. So we have to use it within our country, and because we need it in petrochemicals, We need it for fertilizers, pesticides, and so on and so forth, even for coal-tar for our roads. The Nigerian Society of Engineers should institute, in my strong advice, an annual power summit that should focus on showcasing the prowess of Nigerian engineers in the power sector in particular, and the energy sector in general. This point was made to the NSC leadership in a committee I served, in an NSC committee I served as chairman. I'm bringing it here because I think it is relevant to this discussion. And the last point here is the society should also renew its standing position that all energy-related ministries, departments, and agencies should be headed by engineers, and the society should also be given slots on the governing boards of all energy-related agencies. Mr. Moderator, distinguished engineers, this is the end of my presentation, and I thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Prof. I think you deserve an applause, please. First of all, I want to sincerely thank you for the wonderful work you have done. As we posted in our message, 30 minutes is for the presentation, while we are going to take the next 1 hour to interact and ask questions on the various issues raised in the presentation. So the floor is open for questions. So if you have a question, you raise your hand, you will be asked to unmute yourself, then you will proceed with your question. You raise your hand, then we ask you to unmute, then you can ask your question. Questions and comments. Questions and contributions. Okay, I can see. First, Engineer Fine Ogolo. Engineer Fine Ogolo, you can unmute and ask your question, sir. Engineer Fine.
Okay, yes, thank you. I was trying to unmute directly, but he didn't agree until I saw the sign that came up. I want to start by congratulating Engineer Professor Sambo for the wonderful presentation he has given. We didn't expect less because he has been in the energy sector for a very long time and he's an authority in it. He's also my chairman of my subcommittee in WFEO Committee on Energy. My contribution is that the first thing we need to do in Nigeria and in Africa is to help and curb the security situation. The wars are just too much. The problems, like in Nigeria, for example, most of the Northeast, for example, you can hardly go. And quite a number of North, you can hardly move around. So we have to solve the security problem in Nigeria. Take, if we want to go to wind, most of the areas we want to set up wind farms around Borno State, for example, Bama area and the rest of them, Savannah areas. But you can't do that with the security situation we have at hand. So we need to solve the security situation in Nigeria and in Africa first. Number two, when he showed the map of Africa in the night, the dark continent, it is a very serious matter, and then we have to think out of the box. We need people like Tony Elumelu Foundation and such people to help us fund a trans-African grid from north to south of Africa, and then from east to west of Africa. But that can only be done when we try to mellow down on the conflicts around Africa. The conflicts are too much. The religions we have are already in this place. The tribes are already here. They were done by God. We can't change them. And we just allow these things, continue to fight and kill ourselves, and other places are developing. So AU must go into it and solve and try their best to reduce the conflicts in Africa. The same thing should happen to Nigeria and Nigerian government. And then the African Development Bank, Tony Elumelu Foundation and such organizations should fund a grid, a trans-African grid that will mainly be fueled, be serviced by wind energy and solar energy, by the renewables. We have so much in Africa. They will raise the funds to do that, but these funds will continue to fund itself within 20 or 30 years' time. Many of the investors should have been paid out, and the price of electricity will start going down more and more, that you can easily tap in and have electricity at some minimal cost. At that stage, local governments should be able to pay for their communities and so on, and many communities will be energized in Africa. So we have to think long-term, where African Development Bank, Tony Elumelu Foundation and others will come in to fund long-term investment in African grid. And then governments and other people will buy from it and then tap their communities. From time to time, the cost will go down. That's one of the suggestions that I want to give. Then the Prof also mentioned mini grids. That's basically what we need in Nigeria. The one of having only one grid cannot, and we don't have the technology to sustain one grid. So we have to have mini grids that are interconnected. We can link them up, but we just have to have mini grids in many areas. And then try to remove the bottlenecks, because we are generating over 10,000 megawatts, and we can only distribute around 4,000. It's unacceptable. So if we can distribute only 4,000 now, how do we start aiming at 20 megawatts, 30 and so on? It's not possible. So we must solve the bottlenecks that are hindering distribution, transmission of electricity very quick. We just have to solve that before we can progress. This is what I want to contribute. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Engineer Fine Ogolo. Austin Duru, can you unmute yourself and make your comment? Austin Duru.
Thank you. Thank you, Engineer Ben Osi. And thank you, Prof, for a very succinct and well delivered presentation. Very, very encouraging for those of us who have been looking at how to solve the electricity problem of Nigeria. Thank you. My question and comment and question goes to us. First, wholly, I appreciate the fact that the Prof have mentioned that Nigeria needs to encourage off-grid power solution. In fact, I convene and discuss a forum on off-grid power solution particularly. And second, I want to again say that the Prof's idea on decentralized grid, which he said regionalizing the grid, again, this is an item that has come up in a number of discourse groups that I belong to, and also in our off-grid platform. These things are clearly what needs to be done, but unfortunately, it seems, decision makers have not given enough push. First, funding for off-grid is not happening, especially except for the maybe energizing education projects with 2 or 3 universities being lighted up. This is part of the off-grid initiative, and it has to be done across the whole nation. Funding has to be available. I don't know, I'm just hearing of this rural electrification fund REF today in the Prof's presentation. It's a good one, but we've not seen the action of the Rural Electrification Fund. We need to see that action. If it is from World Bank, is it from European Union, wherever it is, it should be made available to engineers who are trying to do something on the electricity sector. It should not be given to lawyers and, bankers and business people who are not thinking of solution to problems. It should be given to engineers who are the real problem solvers and are thinking our solution so that we can solve the problems and then create business and an opportunity for engineers. On my question, I would like to, if the Prof can help, I mean, the Prof has been in the Energy Commission and now in the Ministerial Committee Power. I would like to know does the government, what is the government's plan on ensuring that NEC, discos, and all the like, NBET, that they are solving the energy theft problem that has, in quotes, crippled the Nigerian electricity supply industry, NESI. Because the discos who are the fund collectors or who are the revenue collectors have kept saying we are not able to collect money and so we have liquidity problem. Therefore, we cannot meet up our commitments to GENCOs, to TCN, and to all the other players, including MAP, which is why government had to start funding MAP directly. And also, we have seen cases of the GENCO saying, hey, we'll switch off our generators since you are not paying us. We've seen cases of GENCOs not being able to pay for gas because they are not getting funds from the DISCO. We've seen MBET, NBET go into crisis and all the arguments, and everybody points to this same problem of DISCO's inability to collect, the revenue or the fund, energy consumption, tariff, and all that from users. I mean, the government, I want to know what the government is doing. On my own, I have sat down and looked at the problem and come up with some small technology solution, which we say that narrowband IoT can fix some of these issues only if the DISCOs are sincere to allow technology to run their business. But then there has to be support. And when I mean support, the DISCOs have to be forced to use technology to solve the problem. Yeah, so I would like to know what the government is thinking about that line, because that is the genesis of liquidity problem of the NESI that has affected not only the DISCOs, but all the other parties. Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you very much, Austin Duru. We take Professor A.A. Zulu. Then Prof will respond and we'll continue. Professor A.A. Zulu. You can unmute.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, sir, thank you very much for this opportunity to say one or two things. I am an energy enthusiast, not an engineer, but a very good of Prof. Sambo. I want to commend the Prof. Join others to commend him for the wonderful presentation. He has been in the energy sector. Before being at the Energy Commission, he was a director in the Energy Center here at Usman Danfodio University, Sokoto. So we've been together for a long time. I know how much Prof is very, very concerned about the issue of energy. I agree with him 100% on all the issues he has raised. The idea that the energy mix, we have to look at it if we really want to really solve the issue of access to energy that is taken for granted. Everybody knows that that is the way to go. But in particular, I also agree with him, some attention need to be given to the renewables in that direction. Solar and other renewable energy, these are candidates for that. He has mentioned the Energize education program, and the impact is already being noted. In fact, he didn't mention Usman Danfodio University. It's one of those institutions where the project has practically taken off, because at the moment it is being tested so that it will be in full-fledged. And of course, the impact of that in terms of IGR, because a sizable amount of money will be liberated to the university for other aspects of education. And I think these are the beauties of the renewable energy, because it lends itself to this type of isolated solutions before actually as a nation, as a country, we are able to develop the technology for the high level energy requirement that we want. I also agree with him that the issue of paying attention to non-fuel uses of crude oil is very, very important, and the government should actually look at that at the moment. I'm glad while was it Ogolo who is talking about people like Tony Olumolu coming in. We'll talk about also the Dangote petrochemical thing that has come on. And I think these are areas that really we need to pay attention to quickly so that we develop, because we can't wait until we are faced with the problem. It's good to anticipate the problem, I think, and that's what the Prof is talking about. This is obvious that there's going to be a challenge. You have the oil and you don't know what to do with the oil, but you have opportunity to now address the issue of the oil, other uses of oil, and then develop the technical and managerial abilities to handle that yourself, and then you can use them for your own progress. So on all this, I really, really appreciate what he has done. What I have not heard him say, I joined late, I'm not sure whether he mentioned that aspect of it, is the issue of the National Research Foundation that is being propagated as one of the key foundation for these kinds of reform that we are talking about, because development is not something that you have a stopgap approach to it. It's something that is continuous. You are always thinking of how to improve things, and therefore that aspect of research as the foundation, the key driver of all these things will move. I know he's a member of that group. I know he's a very key member, not only just a member, but I've not heard him say that. He may have said it at the earlier stage of the presentation. Why I'm raising this is because of some sentiments that are coming across. He raised the sentiment in one of his conclusions that all organizations that involving energy be headed by engineers. I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, I'm not an engineer, and therefore you can understand that I'm differing a little bit here. Yes, engineers, yes, professionals should head organizations. That is understandable. But a follow-up presentation by, I think, Duru was emphasizing those issues. But these are just the problems. I think the issue is we must work together as a people. All professionals must play a role in actually moving the country forward. It is this isolated approach to things, I think, is one of our own problems. It's something you require the scientists in, you require the medical doctor, you require the economists, you require the political scientists to actually move these things forward. It is not necessarily the engineer or the chemist or the physicist only, but it is a teamwork, everybody playing his role. And I think that is the way forward. Mr. Chairman, I thank you for this opportunity, and I thank the society for organizing this interaction, which I believe is very, very useful for the future of our country. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, sir. I think before Prof comes on board, let me also allow Dr. Wilson Ali to make his comments.
Good afternoon, everyone. And I'm so happy that I logged on to this program. I'm a silent fan of Prof. We have never met, but I've read a lot of his works. When I said a lot, I meant a lot. I play in the power sector. Before I continue, the part of Professor Zoro's reaction now, the way I'm feeling, I'm being compelled to react to him. Issue about engineers of taking over role and so on, but I'll leave that to Prof to deal with. What I want to really dwell on is the issue. There are problems that if even we have 20 megawatts today, we have 30 megawatts today, this issue, this problem will still be lingering. One, the TCN is the main link between generation and distribution. This TCN itself is operating on 3 licenses. To me, this is an abnormality. Issues are not being tackled the way it should be. It's managing the system operations license and the market operation license. These 2 licenses being held by just resources and everything. My own opinion, I've delivered lecture along this line, that TCN should be unbundled, absolutely unbundled to its entities. Do away with MBTE. What is it? MBET. Do away with MBET. The market operator well developed will buy power and from generations and sell to whoever, and they will pay In other industries, you have CBN taking care of the interests of bankers or banking industry. There's still some kind of BPE looking over the shoulder of NEC. This shouldn't be. NEC should be anything, any hold NEC has on, BP has on NEC should be broken. NEC should absolutely be allowed to regulate the power sector. Totally. If these are taken care of, especially the issue of unbundling, the investors, the required investors to invest in the system operation, invest in market operation, we bring in added skills, create more jobs, update our equipment, update our resources, and we drive energy access faster than we can. The way it is now, let no one be fooled. The money is not there. We have to bring in investors. If we are going to lease out, concession these entities to foreign investors when we break them down for a period of 30 to 40 years, in the process, we have our own learning from there and then taking over from there, then better for us. The way it is constituted now, if TCN is not unbundled, if even we have 50 megawatts, 50,000 megawatts, it will not work. Thank you very much. This is just my short contribution. Thank you again, Prof. It's a privilege to hear from you again. I'm well pleased. Thank you, sir.
Caroline Odimma, please, can you unmute yourself?
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. Good evening, everybody. Good evening, sir.
We can't hear you clearly.
Okay, can you hear me now, sir?
Okay, yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, sir, for the privilege. Thank you, everybody. Good evening, everybody. And good evening, Prof, for the wonderful presentation and for the discussion thus far. I want to take it from where Dr. Wilson just landed it on. I want to believe so strongly that we are operating an industry that ages, ages gap in a different sector, in a different technology terrain. Now, we are operating in an industry whereby it has been for a long age. And I'm sure one of the things we are looking at here is ATC and silos, which has been a major issue. And for those ATC and silos to be reduced, there's a lot of things that need to be factored into it, which consider that you can't be operating a technology that is over 40 years old and you're trying to make money or you're trying to get a better of it in the technology age. There's a disconnect somewhere. And that disconnect comes in place of investment and in place of people who are that in the place of decision making. Now, and also feel that there's a disconnect from the upcoming engineers, the young engineers, and the old engineers. There's serious disconnect because you can't, for us to be able to move forward in this industry, the two must be able to work in hands. So, and I identified two things in my head while Prof was just delivering the lecture. Now, for us to be able to reduce the reduction loss, one, the infrastructure need to be looked into. There should be total investment and restructuring. That's number one. Yeah, if we're going to take care of the grid, try to decentralize the grid is good. But however, no matter how we generate, and we can't be able to wheel out, and we can't be able to, it's still on the same place, which means the infrastructure needs to be taken care of. And also grooming younger engineers who can better reason or work perfectly on the recent technologies, be able to drive this process. If you look at the Western world where we are looking at, there is always a communication, there is always a breach of communication, there is always the communication gaps that are being closed from while you're in university to where you graduate, even while you start at every stage of experience or in the industry, there is always a channel and transfer of baton. But in Nigeria factor is a different thing. A particular sector, a particular age is still rovering and expecting the best of industry at the stage we are, which is totally, we might be able to get that best. So that disconnect needs to be fixed properly. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Caroline, Line. And Prof, I want to add to what some of the issues raised so that you can address some of them, all of them together. One of the issues raised here was the issue of distribution. That the number we generate is much higher than what we distribute. Now, what is the problem facing our distribution? Is it that we didn't do enough work on that aspect, knowing fully well that we are going to be generating a certain number and we should prepare so that have adequate facilities so that what we are distributing should be also more corresponding or I don't know how to put it with what we are generating. Now, another issue is this. You have mentioned some alternatives to power supply. You mentioned coal and you mentioned solar, you mentioned others. Now, we have coal in abundance. You said from Enugu down to the north, we have enough deposit of coal. You also mentioned that we have uranium in Nigeria that we can also start looking into building. Sorry, I'm trying to get the name of the plant. That's I will get it. Now, why are we not investing in building? Because in South Africa, over 50% of their energy is generated via coal. And the same thing in most other countries. Why are we not investing since we have this large deposit of coal in Nigeria? We went to Sweden sometime in 2015, and we visited the power plant in Malmö in Sweden. That plant is running from waste to power, and it is serving the whole of Malmö. That plant is serving the whole of a community. The same thing, they have it in Singapore, waste to power. So why can't we, look at these small power plants that can, serve certain communities? And you give an instance of our universities, taking the universities off grid by introducing solar panels in our university communities, providing electricity to these communities and taking them off grid. Ministry of Works Housing is doing the same thing. If you go to the headquarters of Ministry of Works and Housing, you will discover that all the car parks in the ministry have been converted to, they are putting solar panels in all their car parks. It didn't stop them from using the car parks. You can still park under them. It's just like a canopy. The aim is to take them off the grid and use that solar to power the entire ministry. I believe that is a right step in the right direction. So my question is this: why are we not also investing in other sources of power? We have wind, we have others. Why are we not investing in all these areas? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. I'm very glad to listen to these six sets of comments and questions. I'll go through quickly one by one. Engineer Fine Ogolo made very beautiful recommendation. I agree with him 100% that the security situation should be of paramount concern. I think all Nigerians worry about the problem, and without security, we cannot do anything. Even traveling simply from Kaduna to Abuja, now we cannot do it by road. Yesterday, I came to Kaduna by train, and tomorrow I'm going back to Abuja by train. Professor Zuru asked me never to go by road, so that I will not be kidnapped. The thing is very serious. I want to believe that the step one that the government has done recently, that anybody carrying AK-47 should be shot and killed. I think that's the kind of policy position that will do away with banditry, kidnappings, and all these misdemeanors. I want to believe that if these policies are implemented 100%, then the issue of security will begin to be solved. And I think sooner than later we'll reach that position. And even though we have security problem, it does not mean we should not recommend plans for strengthening the Nigerian economy. We should plan strengthening the Nigerian economy, believing that sooner than later security will be solved. But I agree 100% with him on all the issues he raised. The Tony Elumelu Foundation can come along with African Development Bank. I also mentioned the African Development Bank. And this issue of African grid, I want Engineer Ogolo to present it to the other committee that is mentioned, the World Federation of Engineering Organization Energy Committee, which I'm also chairing, and he is a very strong member there. I think that is the kind of thing we'll take there. But I think our principals in Nigeria should take this African grid first to ECOWAS and then to African Union. I think it is something that can be done, and to interconnect. The interconnection of mini grids is something also very important. However, when you have mini grids all connected, it will be slowly maybe a regional grid. And regional grid is what I propose as a way of decentralizing the almighty, huge TCN. Engineer Austin Duru also made very beautiful recommendation. Off-grid, yes, this is supporting all that I've said. Regionalizing the grid, I'm glad you also like it. The Rural Electrification Fund is a creation of the law. This Electricity Sector Power Reform Act of 2005 came with creation of Rural Electrification Agency and Rural Electrification Fund. There's another one also, this Power Consumers Assistance Fund. And that one is separate, is for disadvantaged, poor consumers. They are supposed to be subsidized using that fund. So it is something that has been there. And our Rural Electrification Agency's main program have been using this Rural Electrification Fund. But of course, their development partners like African Development Bank, World Bank, they also provide funds there. I must also tell you at this juncture that the National Assembly very recently got the Rural Electrification Agency to accept that the Energizing Education Program was wrongly funded by Rural Electrification Fund because they say the universities are not rural areas. But one is glad to say that the development partners noted this, and they now said the funding of the energizing education, they will provide as much money as possible to do it. So the rural education will not be used henceforth. And that is what has slowed down this project to, it's going to be extended to all tertiary institutions gradually. All universities will have it. And it's a very beautiful thing that should be done. Now, the government's plan to the, okay, Duru, you said the Rural Electrification Fund should not be given to lawyers. I don't think they give it to lawyers. What they do is to advertise. And I hope you have been following some of the adverts. You apply. So a lawyer that has an engineering company that has employed engineers will be the one to prepare for him. So he may own the company, but if you go down, you find competent engineers working for him. So I'm a little bit, I won't say yes, I support you, but I don't think his money is given to groups just like that. No, it's a company that applies based on the set criteria. And I know Rural Electrification Agency has very, very strict guidelines, detailed guidelines for virtually everything it is doing. On the issue of theft, well, the provision now is that unfortunately, anybody caught doing this misdemeanor, unfortunately, is handed over to the police. The distribution company, or if you have your own farm in your village, you catch somebody, you cannot prosecute him. You have to hand him over to the police. But I think slowly with the push and insistence of the discourse and other members of the Nigeria electricity supply industry, I think the police also, with time, they will stop their corruptive tendency of releasing criminals to go back, continue to. I think if we insist, anybody we catch, we send the police and continue pressurizing the police, slowly, I think they will start doing the right thing. Professor Zuru actually is a very distinguished chemist. He's an expert in biogas. Biogas is a major component of renewable energy, and he served as the director of the Sokoto Energy Research Center. I agree with him. Energy matters are taken from all fronts, which is why you find even economists in energy. You find physicists, chemists, but of course, majority are engineers. And really, when you have a forum organized by engineers, and even though I invite a few that are not engineers to join, it's not that we will not say things that we do in our own engineering groups. I'm saying this because the last point I put, that if you look at what I wrote, I say NSC should continue with its own standing call. I know NSC for about 30 years, that is its position. And so when NSC organized this event and asked me, I will put it what we've been talking at NSC level, not minding that a top chemist is with us and may not like it, but we note your points. Your points are well taken, and we'll continue to use it. And at this stage, I want to say, whenever NSC says all engineering-related ministries should be headed by engineers, government does not do that all the time. It does that to a certain extent. Like right now, the Minister of Power is an engineer. The Minister of Works, is a lawyer. So it's not all the time that it is doing it. The MD of FEMA is a civil engineer, and so on and so forth. So most are in line with what NSC is calling, but there are few that are not. I would have liked Dr. Wilson to also tell us his mind about this, your own comment, Professor Zuru, but he has left it to me, so that's why I'm talking this way to you. I deliberately did not show the case of the energizing education program project in Sokoto because it is not yet commissioned. I only listed the two that are commissioned. There are two more that have been commissioned. That Bauchi has been commissioned, and one other at Efru, they've been commissioned. So as soon as that of Sokoto is commissioned, I will enter it into this presentation for another forum. Again, I want to say that the National Research Foundation, I did not, because this is, I think it will be another forum that we are focusing more on this research and development that I will bring in. I thought about it, but I said for this 30 minutes that Ben Ossi told me to do, I will concentrate on other things, leaving that for another. So I didn't mention the TED funds intervention, along with the issue of triple helix concept of private sector, governments, and educational institutions. That will come for another day. Engineer Wilson Ali, I agree with you fully. TCN is too unwieldy. This issue of system operation and market operation should definitely be separated from it. Actually, the papers are in that direction. One keeps wondering what is withholding the government from going ahead to implement it. But we have also taken it in the task force for power that I'm chairing. So our thinking at that forum is exactly in line with their own. Of course, I should tell you, we have a member or two members in that group that are vehemently against what you are saying, but the majority of us there are in line with you. So we're taking it along that direction. And I agree with Engineer Caroline Odimba. This aging equipment should be done away with. That's the way that we're going to make significant progress. Engineer Ben Ossi, this issue of distribution is a very disturbing thing. But the way the distribution companies were selected, it still gives some doubt, because each one of them supplied documents to show they are able to raise money to expand their facilities, to expand their infrastructure, to be able to will any electricity amount that is given to them, but they didn't. So you can see somewhat in the selection process, perhaps there was some compromising that has been done. Is not, I believe, is not the companies that have the financial capability they are taking. But on the same matter, I want to quickly say, government also did not help matters, because government withheld 40% shareholding. If government had paid its own shareholding, I think the discourse would have been in a better position to expand their facilities. So there's this, that's why I made the recommendation, government should strive. And there's another beautiful thing that will come if government pays fully. But of course, in other fora that I participate, government officials told us they've been giving all kinds of support, aggregates of which, if they are put together, it will almost be maybe 25, 30% of their shareholding. But I say, was that clearly indicated that this support to discourse is part of the shareholding? If not, then it's out of balance. So I still think if government pays the shareholding, and like I mentioned, if there are 10 board members, government will say 40%, give us 4. You, private sector, take 6. And you bring MD, will put chairman of the board. And then things will be done better. So both the companies, it seems, I wouldn't want to say they lied or they misled, but it's something close to that. And then two, government did not provide its own share of the fund. So if this can be done, then discourse can move a long way. And that's why I said when stakeholder meetings are held to compile things to be amended in the electricity laws, then this issue of disco matter should come along with the issue of TCN. And Dr. Ali has reminded me of also, but I think that one, like I mentioned, is already sorted out. It's just for it to take off. Again, you mentioned the issue of coal. Coal is available in huge quantities from Enugu to Kogi to Benue up to Gombe State. In fact, in Gombe, the Ashaka Cement Company is using part of the coal around that area as a coking material in cement production. So there is, but I should tell you also, coal power plants produces the largest amount of carbon dioxide emission, which the United Nations is pushing countries to move away from, so that the climate change issue will not be complicated. When the climate change matter is so bad, then the whole world is crumbling to an end. But at the same time, the beauty is that technologies, industry people have long come up with what is called cleaner coal power plants, or simply clean coal power plants, that you have much lower carbon footprints than conventional. We spend a bit more money, but since we have coal in abundance in 14 states, for this clean coal power plants, I subscribe to it, and all the forum that I'm involved, all the committees I'm involved, we say God has endowed us with this, so we must use it. Also, God has endowed us with uranium. I know some of our colleagues don't like it, but I like it. I think nuclear power plants should also come into the equation. And to allay the fears of our colleagues, we have so many nuclear technology power countries, and Nigeria has signed some understanding with them. At this moment, as we're talking, the government has some agreement with Areva of France, and there's another company of Russia. Government has entered. Government has also entered some training agreement with South Korea and America. So this nuclear technology power country can build power plants for us and operate it together with us for as long as possible. And because you see the beauty of nuclear power plant, once it is switched on, it can continue 2-3 years continuously. So the beauty is that it caters for base load requirement of countries. Base load requirement is that hour of the 24 hours that has lowest economic activity, like say between midnight and 4 a.m. When you have nuclear power plants, you can go to sleep, leave them to cater for that level of that time electricity supply. And the issue is that once we are going for nuclear power plant, then we will develop our uranium. The northeastern part of uranium deposits in Nigeria are the ones that outcrop in Niger Republic. And you know, in Niger Republic for about 30 years, 20-something years, American companies, well, French companies first, recently American companies are also mining their uranium from the Niger side. And then when the northeast, then it outcrops down again in Cross River State, huge amount in Cross River State. And since God has endowed us with it, I think we better use it. So I agree with you 100%, Engineer Ben Osioko.
Thank you very much, Prof. I think that's all we have to take today, because if you look at time, it's exactly 4:30 p.m. And yes, in our information notice, we say that the presentation will start by 3 o'clock and end by 3:30. Then question and answer 3:30 to 4:30. That's 1 hour, and it's exactly 1 hour 30 minutes. Prof, we want to thank you for making our time. Despite your busy schedule, you earlier told me that you will be attending a very important function today. And despite that, you were able to make our time to give us this wonderful presentation. A lot of the people have requested, the participants have requested that you send a copy of your presentation so that we can share to the participants. And I assure them I will be getting it from you. And once I get the presentation, I will share it to all the participants. Once again, we thank you for coming, and we want to sincerely thank and appreciate all the participants. By the special grace of God, next month, we are also going to be having another very important discussion on one of the topical national issues. Once again, I appreciate you all, and you have a wonderful evening. I remain OC Oko, the moderator for today's event. Good night.
Thank you very much. I will send the paper right now.
Okay, sir.
Yes,
All
thank
right,
you
sir.
very much. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
And if there are questions in the chat, because if you can send them to me,
okay,
then
sir.
I will respond with time. I
All
can
right,
see
sir.
engineers. Yes, thank you very much.
I will do that, sir. All right, sir.